We're here with Knight Kavanagh and Page Chief Executive John Eady to discuss the idea of a national centre for rugby union in the same way that football has St George's Park, which of course Knight Kavanagh and Page worked on, specifically the community engagement plan. John, what are your views on this subject?
Well, I think the rugby union was initially reticent about the idea of a national centre when I discussed it with them originally when we were doing the work for the FA. I think what has happened is since Stuart Lancaster's appointment as head coach, they've moved on to the idea of the fact that a centre probably makes quite a lot of sense. There are a range of age group sides which could make use of it. There are a range of other uses they can make of it which reduce their levels of dependence on certain hotels and, if you like, functioning largely in and around West London, which is not the cheapest part of the country in which to operate. And also a substantial number of the players involved in national squads at all levels, through from 16 to the England senior squad, emanate from right across the country. In fact, arguably a higher proportion are travelling further into London for the sort of work they're doing than is actually useful or necessary in terms of the best interests of the players themselves.
The notion and the benefits from a high performance standpoint of such a centre were also flagged up in a recent report by Sir Ian McGeechan and Peter Keane. They pointed out that it has the potential to really enhance the high performance activities as well.
Well, I think the key points proved by St George's Park relate to the quality of facilities in which footballers are now enabled to train. Another factor the RFU might wish to take into account is the potential co-location of its coaching and refereeing division, which is clearly something the FA is committed to fully by putting its FA learning into St George's Park. The other side of that coin is that a centre which combines elements of full-on strength and conditioning, capacity to play and train in a range of environments, indoor and outdoor, and I think the RFU should probably look to replicate what the FA has done in terms of full-size or at least large-size indoor provision. Is clearly something which mitigates against some of the factors which create less than high-quality rugby training when it's conducted in a range of other environments.
Having played a role in the development of St George's Park and seeing other sports and governing bodies in their high-performance activities, do you have any venues in mind or any specific areas or regions where you see that a centre such as this could fit?
Well, clearly Burton, while it's in the middle of the country, is a slightly isolated site, and I think initially that was one of the discussion points with regard to the RFU locating teams, whether it was 7 teams or national full-size teams there. Arguably there are other locations within the Midlands which would suit. One that comes to mind is Broad Street Rugby Club, which is a well-established club in its own right, but also I think there's substantial land adjacent to that upon which the club and potentially the RFU has options. The other thing that occurred to me was we're currently working with the Olympic combat sports, and one of the discussions we're having with them relates to the idea of a potential, possibly shared national centre. Now there are very good there's very good alignment between rugby union and sports, for example, like judo and wrestling, where the grapple-related elements of the tackle and various other things are brought quite neatly into a line. It wouldn't be too difficult for the RFU, within the context of planning such a site, to perhaps accommodate these sports for whom the spatial demands are much more limited within some sort of complex whereby one could perhaps kill 4 or 5 or 6 NGB birds with one stone.
And the funding for such a complex, presumably by identifying those sort of synergies, could also be assisted as well, I presume? Well,
arguably there's a case to be made within the context of those sports, certainly within the context of the RFU's present spend on the variety of locations that it uses nationally. I think there are also lessons to learn from the RFU with regard to the installation of hotel accommodation on site, which I think is going to be in many ways one of the key facets of the success of that site. As people are aware, there's distinctive provision for elite players in the 4-star accommodation that's there, separated fairly neatly from the wider and larger 3-star accommodation, which caters for the wider users of the centre. My gut feeling is that probably an RFU national centre of this type would attract an equally significant conference and, if you like, an interest-based market in the same way that Burton does.
Presumably as well it would be an opportunity to engage with the whole of rugby top to bottom and the community and create a further opportunity in that way.
Well, I suppose one of the reasons Coventry comes to mind is because there are some 20 rugby clubs in the city of Coventry. Broad Street is one of the larger, better set up clubs in that area, but there are a further 20, and the East Midlands is really one of the strongholds of rugby union. So something in Coventry or in that neck of the woods would be adjacent to a very large proportion of clubs, some of whom may make use of it for a range of pre-season during season training and other sort of options to do with their broader sort of operation and training requirements.
And you feel it could also perhaps be a venue for lower level showpiece occasions, schools finals and the like?
I think one of the things that's happened since the RFU relieved itself of Castlecroft is that other than Twickenham, I guess it's tended to spread those sort of matches around the place, or hold some at Twickenham. I think there is room possibly for what you might call a right-sized second-tier arena of some description, perhaps with maybe 10 to 15,000 seats or fewer possibly, to accommodate these sort of matches which bring, for example, schools together or clubs or perhaps some of the county fixtures that the RFU is presently promoting.